The sentence.
The statement.
Hello. My name is Susan Parenti, and I was asked to give a report on an activity that a group of us have been doing. The person who asked me to do this was myself. This is a scene on an elevator, that one, in this building 2 days ago. I'm myself, and Mark will play various people who work in this building. Scene 1.
Hi.
Oh, hi.
What floor?
Oh, I'm going down to 2.
So you were on the 6th floor. There's a conference going on?
Yeah, it's on cybernetics.
What's that?
It's a study of information and control in the human and the machine.
Oh. See ya.
Scene 2, the same elevator, later in the day. Mark is someone else. I'm myself.
Hi.
Hi.
What floor?
Oh, I'm going down to 2.
So what are you guys doing up there on 6th floor?
Well, it's a cybernetics conference.
What's that like? Like cyberpunk, right?
No, it's really hard to explain, but
I see.
well,
Well, see ya. Nice day.
later in the day, again I'm myself and Mark is someone else.
Hi.
Hi.
What floor?
Oh, I'm going down to 2. There's telephones there.
Hey, are you the new person that's in that office on 6?
Oh no, I'm actually going to a conference there.
Oh, yeah, that cybernetics thing. What is cybernetics, anyway?
Well, it's not just one field like chemistry or history. So like a lot of different people come to it. And what we're all thinking about are ways to study complex systems and then to treat those systems.
What's a complex system?
Well, like I bet this whole center is really pretty complicated to run, right?
Oh, boy, you bet. Especially when the students are there, it can be a real mess.
Right, so now that would be a complicated system. How it would become complex, and what we would study in cybernetics is if you were to describe and study that system, and how you were describing it would be part of what you were studying. That would be complex.
So my opinion about this place would matter? Well, wow, that sounds better than what we have now. Now it's just this QMP thing.
What's QMP?
Quality Management Program. It's this new management thing where all the employees are supposed to manage their own department. So you have to go to all these meetings and nobody decides anything. Cybernetics sounds better. See ya.
Bye. Scene 4, later in that day. Scene 5. Thank you. That was it for those scenes. Last explanation, the long one, is in a sense my tribute to the people in this room who have created the field of cybernetics, in that cyberneticians state their participation in the dynamics of what they're studying and describing as part of what they're studying and describing. In that fact, cyberneticians can always be made to blush. Thank you. Okay? All right. Sorry, I didn't mean this to be a series of little things you have to applaud. I will now describe the project that we're doing. This is a booklet, a hand booklet, and it would be called Cybernetics for Social Change Activists and Social Change for Cyberneticians. And once again, okay, the book would be called Cybernetics for Social Change Activists and social change for cyberneticians. And at the moment, how we imagine this book is binary. Half of the book would be addressed to social change activists, people like myself, and would take the ideas of cybernetics and connect them to the formulations and desires of we activists. That would be part one of the book. And the second part of the book would be addressed to cyberneticians, of which I consider myself one, and would take the ideas and desires of social change and connect them to myself. So the first part of the book is addressed to people who want to change society, and the second part of the book is addressed to people from the cybernetic discipline. This is how we imagine it. And I say we, don't know if all the we's in this room recognize this, but this project is a corollary to a project we've been doing called the Summer School for Designing a Society. We had some information about it. This is the fourth year we're doing it, which is a little think tank of people who are trying to do just what this book is, which is trying to take ideas that are beyond the intuitions of we social change activists and connect them to the desires and the urgency of people who want to change society, who have that predisposition to act. And what I'm going to do now is describe some of those chapters and go from part one of the book to part two, and the parts where I'm addressing the social change activists, I will do by looking in this direction at this figure. Yes, that's the activist. And when I look in your direction, that's when I'm talking to the cyberneticians. And again, I say the we because I think, let me acknowledge some of the people so that you can be embarrassed with me if this is not what you would like. Rachel Rubin has been part of this, Larry Richards. These are people directly who have been part of the talking. Herbert Brün, Mark Enslin, the people in the Performers Workshop Ensemble, Jeremy Klein, Frank Galushka, Michael Gagan, Judy Lombardi, certainly. Other people, and there's other people, Steve Sloan, yes. And also Sam Markovich. Well, okay, he's there. And certainly we are constantly referring to most of your ideas in this room. This chapter, which is called Parallels Between Social Change and Cybernetics, is addressed to cyberneticians, you. This chapter would deal with the two ideas that Umberto Maturana has given us and is consistent with the rest of the ideas, which is that everything said is said by an observer to an observer. We've certainly heard this. And the second constant emphasis that Maturana has given us, which is that science is a way of explaining things, and that people are looking for generative mechanisms, ways of explaining something from one domain that could be used in another. So in this chapter, which is meant to seduce cyberneticians to ideas of social change, I would pose that there is a parallel between the ideas of the observer and science being a series of explanations with political activity. Contract with America could be considered an explanation. Habitat for Humanity could be considered an explanation. When someone says, "Look out the window, what do you see?" that question and the way of answering it is what I call political activity. Someone will say, "Oh, I see someone there can't eat. That's because they're lazy." That's an explanation by an observer. Someone else will say, "Oh, there's a good restaurant." That's an explanation. Someone else will say, "Oh, I see people can't eat. That's because poverty is a systemic consequence of our current social ordering." That's an explanation. And what we have currently going on, and probably it's been so, is a kind of a battle of the seductiveness of whose explanation is going to have the consequences. Herbert Brün has offered a formulation that appeared in Heinz's Perception of the Future and Future of the Perception in 1971. And I think describes what we currently have and maybe give us a different formulation for what people call conservative versus radical. I quote from Herbert Brün: "The definition of a problem and the action taken to solve it largely depend on the view which the individuals or group that discovered the problem have of the system to which it refers. A problem may thus find itself described either as 1, a badly interpreted output, or 2, as a faulty output of a faulty output device, or 3, as a correct but undesired output from a faultless and thus undesirable system. All definitions but the last suggest corrective action, and only the last definition suggests change and so presents an unsolvable problem to those people opposed to change.
In every community, when you make a proposition, be it a committee of scientists, mathematicians, friends, or what, you have 3 groups. There's one group who likes the proposition and wants to cooperate. There's a second group that says, oh, it's very nice, but unfortunately it's impossible. Huh?
But?
Yes, that's what they
I
say.
was making a point here.
Yes,
Yes,
it's very nice, but it is impossible. These are the people who say but.
right, that's what she just
Yes.
said.
And the third group is the one that does not want it. But these people do not use a separate language. They use the language of the people who think it is impossible. So we have all the reasonable people sitting together and we think that is one group. It is not. It is half a group of people who honestly think it can't be done, and the other are malicious hecklers who don't want it to happen and will use, however, the language of declaration of impossibility. And that is our radical next step. How can we turn it off? It being the English language in the mouth of people who don't want change. You have to learn the language of anti-change people. The language, never mind the anti-change people, forget them, marry them, do whatever you want. But the language they speak has to be grating on your chin, on your back. You must ask for a massage after having talked to such a person. It should be like measles or ticks.
Second chapter will be addressed to social change activists, so I'm going to address myself in that direction. Earn your lucky. All right, and I really will talk to us. I am one of them, but at the moment I'm thinking of faces of other people, Jeff Kerr, Soph, and other people that you don't know. For all of us who want social change, in this chapter, I'm going to explain Maturana's ideas, some of the ideas, one being that cognition is a subject-dependent phenomenon bound to the structure and organization of the knower. And second, I will attempt to explain the criticism that we have cognitive access to an objective reality. I'll explain this, blah, 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 pages. What relevance do these ideas have to us activists? The language of us activists is boring, repetitive, and stupidifying. Thus, it is not a mistake or a matter of mere writing talent that scientists, religious people, and we social activists speak in a boring way, in sentence fragments, in slogan logic. Rather, it's actually a correct consequence of our subscription to the paradigm of objectivity and our rejection of the notion of cognition as a subject-oriented phenomenon. How so? From the way we formulate and perform our ideas, we can gather the degree to which we subscribe, pay a yearly dues to the paradigm of objectivity. A formulation of the paradigm of objectivity goes like this. We live in an objective reality that can be known and about which we can make cognitive statements that reveal it as an independent reality whose validity is therefore independent from us as observers. Klaus's outsider position. Thus, I'm still talking to the activists. Since the objectivity paradigm places reality in the dominant role, places the perceiver in a passive role as a mere medium by which we come to know what's true, the perceiver's language is given by objectivity a role of no importance. It is either a mere depiction of what is, a mere vehicle that sends thoughts from one person to another, or a kind of saran wrap that packages thought and reality in which you can see right through, or else language is treated as an interference, a kind of smudge on the window pane between perceiver and perceived. But for the words getting in the way, I could have told you. Thus, it is no wonder that the language and performance of scientists, religious people, and we social activists is boring, repetitive, and stupidifying. Of course, this is bullshit and it's just rhetorical, because if it wasn't any wonder, I wouldn't be wondering about it, but I was doing it for the sake of the argument. So this chapter would go on and would be addressed trying to indict social activists myself, giving a theoretical basis for why we speak in a boring, stupidifying, and uninteresting manner. Social activists, we have a lot of things to worry about, but I thought I would add one more, which is to indict us for subscribing to the notion of objectivity, which would be fun when you're on a rally to be arguing about that idea. This chapter would also be for cyberneticians. I would just change the order and say that we people who are religious, that the people who are religious, social change, and we cyberneticians have language which is frequently boring, repetitive, and stupidifying. I make one last addendum and try to point out in the chapter addressed to cyberneticians that it is not a coincidence that the people who have created the area of the field are performers. I think Maturana and Heinz and Herbert and Pask and Stafford and Annetta are certainly performers, in that they realized that behind their language is not a reality, and that their language is actually, and the performance of these ideas is constitutively bound to what they are doing. That's all. So I don't think it's a mere coincidence that the people who have begun this area we love because they're good performance. They deal with timing, emphasis, sequence. They create an audacious character on stage. They do not try to look like an academic or a systems manager person. They try to look like they are out of this world. This is an intended idea. Ernst also is a particular performance. In my world, performance is a very high compliment. This now is a chapter that would be explaining to you cyberneticians again what we social activists are dealing with in the following way, and I really address this to Klaus and to some of the statements of Ernst. And you should know, at the moment, I don't assume any of you are social change activists, but I'll tell you what's going on in our area. There is the emphasis on multiculturalism. I'm sure you've heard of that. And that posits the idea, it's an if-then statement. It says, if the voices of people who have previously been marginalized from the dominant discourse were to be raised, and women, and Afro-Americans, and Hispanics, and other people were to enter the discourse, then, and this then is rarely filled in, but then good things would happen is the implication. So you go to conferences, and if they are socially conscious, there will be an attempt to get the women to speak. This is an explanation and a reality. How long it will last, I'm not sure. And some of you know of what I'm talking about. You have heard of multiculturalism, right? Cultural diversity? No, you haven't heard of this? Okay. Rachel won't say the same thing. Yeah. Second, this flies in the face of the second thing that we're aware of, which is that with the rise of mass media in this culture, it's become clear that when people speak, they're frequently mouthpieces for CNN. And particularly people who have not been given these circumstances to develop their thought, they're generally ruled by a language. Women's magazines rules a lot of things. So these two ways of proceeding, cultural diversity, multiculturalism, and the notion that our language is dominated by what we're repeating, actually are totally inconsistent with one another. An example, I go to a conference. Women are asked to now take the microphone. We don't want to hear from the white men who will soon be dead. Women come to the microphone. We meet in a room and say, okay, what can we say? We're now given the responsibility to address this conference. Now the subdominant voices are given the microphone, and the men are in the background and are not amplified. And I sit in the room with my friends, and one of us says, well, I think I want to get in touch with my feelings. And this conference needs to deal with that. Now, this is a voice from a woman who's not part of the dominant culture, and for me, isn't exactly hand to mouth from Glamour magazine. What do you do? It's a very, and this is interesting because there's the belief that when somebody says I, that their self is the subject of that sentence. But we have learned from Foucault and Herbert Brün and others that language is the subject of the sentence, and that the word I is one of the most sold out pieces of real estate in the English language. I has been bought by women's magazines to begin. I want to have a good sex life. Am I the subject of that sentence? Why assume, Klaus, why assume that because you say the word I, that is the moment that it is referring to the distinguished and distinguishing self? It is a problem, and it is complex. And when Heinz talked about having the variety to deal with these problematics, it's a wonderful area. So now as cyberneticians, I've told you about that, and we need a way to analyze our way out of that problem. The very last thing is again addressed to the social change activists. Probably taking too much time. Okay. And this is an attempt, my friends, to connect the ideas of closure of a system and of perturbation with our desires to change something. In this chapter, I will explain to you what closure of a system and perturbation, blah, 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 blah. Then I will say, what does this have to do with us as social activists? Our normal sentence is, this is wrong, something must be changed. What can we do to change it? Now, if we accept the ideas of closure of a system and of perturbation as an interesting subjunctive possibility, then we would have to change our language to this. Okay, the normal activist position, this is wrong. We need to change it. Let's do. Now, the activist who has been educated by cybernetics would go like this. I have three possibilities. This is wrong. What can we do? Such that the system, in order to both heed its homeostasis and respond to our activities, will retune its homeostatic conditions. Let's. Formulation 2 might be, this is wrong. What can we do? Such that with its initiative, the system will interact with us in a radically different way. Let's. Or, and this is my favorite, and then I will end. This is wrong. What can we do? Well, what we do needs to be so designed that the system, as it heeds its homeostasis and as it heeds what we have done, will make that compensation that will place it in an unusual or occurring state. And then, addressing ourselves to that system, what can we do so that the system, as it heeds its homeostasis and it heeds what we have done, will make that compensation that will place it in another unusual or rarely occurring state? So, an example, my image of this, and I think we are onto something, and this is what Larry Richards and Rochelle brought up about the anomalies, is we look at the homeostasis of the system, we do something. The system, in its attempt to keep its homeostasis, you can see how I think by my rocking motion, will respond to us and be in one of its states. Of course, since it's structurally determined, it will simply do something it can do, but something that it rarely does, or in a sequence that it rarely does. So it will be put in this position. This is the system in response to us. Maybe for 4 hours, it will look like this. And then we as social activists, now tuned by cybernetics, we won't let go and just have a rally, which wastes a lot of time. No. We will send another volley towards that slightly deformed system. And it, in response, and of course always able, particularly capitalism, to maintain its homeostasis, turn everything into a market, it will look like this. We had an anomaly on Friday. We had that power cutback. That was an opportunity. So, with thinking of it this way, I am looking for ways, we are looking for ways, that cybernetic ideas could radically and non-violently, and with everybody's happiness, actually transform itself, or there the language needs some rigor and some, I get into sort of slop here. So this is the project, thank you.